funny thing is, I don't even like video games.
People talk a lot about using games as an escape.
Le fiche.
But what we're not talking about enough is how fun it is to lean on how horrible working a real job is.
Are we developing such a poop factory? No, we are not. Because we already have.
And even though streamers will tell you time and time again that yes, it is easier than working a 9 to 5.
I just crapped on myself.
Ever since Five Nights at Freddy's and other games like it, we've been focusing on how truly awful it feels to be backed into doing something you hate just to barely make ends meet. Games like Night of the Consumers, Zoocosis, which that's definitely a video game. Definitely a video game. Phasmophobia, Lethal Company, all of these are expanding on both unsettling you and frustrating you, especially when you have a boss who hardly explains the mechanics of the game. That's where Rodland of Pipes comes in. It cranks up the hysteria of being the new guy at work up to 11. Now there's more cryptids at work than just your mean boss and that guy who doesn't ever shower. I'm pretty sure anyone that's worked in retail or hospitality has had that person. But first, I've got to show you how well I did on my first day at my brand new job. I also want to say, if you want to meet me in person, I will be at the MegaCon Live event in Dublin from the 18th to the 19th of January. And then MegaCon Live in London on the 25th and 26th of January. I'll be doing a meet and greet both events. We'll be selling merch as well. Hopefully, I will see you there. So, you know the rules, boys. Lights off for horror games. What's happening here is I'm stuck crawling through pipes. You can't turn around and can only move with on-screen buttons and interact with stuff in front of you, like a point-and-click adventure game.
Oi mate, why can't you turn around?
Big boot.
I know making the comparison between Five Nights at Freddy's and horror games is the same as comparing Dark Souls to, well, anything. But there's even a quirky boss that communicates to you the game's tutorial.
Okay, open up the probe and you'll see a button that's labeled ping. Just press that. Probe's gonna make a sound, and you're gonna hear the sound echoing back to you through the pipes. Enter however many times you hear it, press OK.
Honestly, this is pretty hard to grasp if you're not in the driver's seat, so we're going to simplify it a bit. The map is always the same. Your ping locations aren't. Your sense of direction is how you're going to get from place to place. You're not a cursor on this map, and the sections feel wide, so getting your bearings can be really tough. If anything, it really reminds you how dumbed down most games are, having an exact point where you are on the map, or a constant objective marker floating above your head pointing where to go.
Don't you feel silly?
If this game had that, you'd probably be able to beat it in about 10 minutes. In Five Nights at Freddy's, you were usually sat in a chair, or sat in a chair, or sat in a chair, or looking in a closet.
Hey, people.
But here, you're actively moving around trying to travel to certain locations inside the pipes to ping them. You count the amount of echoed pings and then enter that number to complete the section and move on to the next. Sounds simple enough, but it can be really difficult because the amount of pings can come out incredibly disjointed, and also you're under the pressure of everything else that's in the pipes. But regardless, the first pipe is pretty small. That's what she said. And there's only 2 pings other than the one near the spawn to contend with. With enough perseverance, you'll be done with this one quickly. But that was only the tutorial. I mean, if you didn't beat that, you shouldn't even really be playing the game anyway.
Fuck.
So, in your briefing, you should have been given an ad for a so-called plumbing business known as Rodland of Pipes. He is showing some activity in your area today, so if you do see him, turn off your heat lamp and he'll go away.
Right away, you'll get a ring from your nameless, faceless boss telling you that you're not alone down here. The first cryptid you'll meet is Rodland.
Hello.
He'll hide around corners or at the far end of pipes waiting for you to crawl around. Or hunting you down when you've got your map open for too long.
I will send you back to the depths of Hades!
The only way to get rid of Rodland temporarily is to turn off your light so he can't focus on you.
Must have been the wind.
but with the drawback of it draining your heat. And you really, really don't want to run out of heat when crawling around down in these pipes.
Life is all about the drain.
Guys, it's Five Nights at Freddy's, but they're pipes. The heat is your battery, and turning the lights off is basically shutting the security doors.
Feel flesh gripping yours.
It's all in Leb F5. Even still, on his own, Rodland is pretty easy to manage, as long as you're not rushing. You'll have a brief moment to react before you turn the light off. I do want to say, though, the sound of Rodland's limbs skittering along the pipes are just, horrible.
Disgusting.
But on top of that, he's a pretty passive threat. You know, jump scare, turn the light off, he goes. That's pretty much it. This is where the toilet gets flushed on us down here a bit.
Wake up in the morning, drop a big old line.
Metaphorically speaking. No association with a skibbity toilet. Each map is gradually getting larger, which means there's more ground to cover, which means it's easier to get lost. And on top of that, your boss has another call for you.
Open your probe and keep the ping button held down now.
What was that? Awesome. So on top of Rodland, you now have an actual mouth breather heaving down your neck every few minutes. And if you don't keep holding down the ping button to jump scare him, he'll strangle you to death. So this is basically the only game I can think of where I'm the one spamming jump scare sounds. Now, unfortunately, guys, I'd love to lie to you saying I beat this game with absolutely 0 deaths, much like how PewDiePie when he was playing Dark Souls.
Oh my fuck, I forgot about the explosion. No! You see that death counter?
The problem is I was already on the edge of my seat after being spooked by Rodland, and my reaction was so bizarre, it actually looks like a paid bit. It doesn't even look like an actual reaction. Oh my god. I was freezing to death and just wanted to, you know, check the map, but I wasn't facing a wall, so he couldn't sneak up on me. What was I meant to do there, man? And there goes that run at pipe 3. By this point, the atmosphere was starting to get to me a little bit. Keep in mind, the first pipe was entirely empty, so everything ramping up so suddenly was really messing with me. I was actually so tweaked out, I started checking my actual surroundings to make sure Rodland wasn't there.
What was that? I got a Dachshund on them motherfucker.
So even though this was the 3rd level in the game, I just kept getting rolled. I was overwhelmed by the sudden ramp up in difficulty. I ran out of heat for the first time and thought I could make it, but the Phantom was on me before I could even finish reading the map. C7. What does that mean? 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 Oh, there's something there. There's something there. There's something there. Cannot confirm. Possibly 9 pings. It's low. Oh, God. Oh, my God. One thing I did notice that's really cool, depending on what enemy in the pipes actually kills you, you'll get a unique death card. And these are pretty gnarly, usually ending up with half your body being eaten or even irradiated to the point that your body is just never going to be recovered. But this isn't all bad. As chat was quick to point out, none of the menus, except the full pause, stopped the heat from ticking away. Now, one thing you might notice when I pull out anything to use, like for example the scanner or the map, it actually drains the heat faster than if I never used them in the first place. This is another key mechanic in the game because for the most part you're trying to navigate around pipes, and a lot of the times you'll probably get lost and want to know where you are. You're only really allowed to pull out your map for a quick second to guess where you are, plot your next point and put it away, because relying on it too much, you'll basically die before you can even complete the mission. So it was obvious. It was time for me to lock in. Wow. For real this time. Yeah, just kill me. I was never going to make that. Even though I said earlier Rodland isn't that much of a threat on his own, because he isn't.
Holy crap!
It's still very clever because for the most part, he'll usually be waiting around a corner of the pipe. And much like any Dark Souls or Elden Ring sweat, he's a master at PvP roll catching. If you don't know what roll catching is, it's a term that's basically used because there's so much stamina in those games, you could roll around forever.
This thing ain't steering right.
So the only real thing the enemy can do is wait until you've finished for those couple frames where you're not invulnerable to then catch a hit. That's roll catching. And that's exactly what Rodland will do because he'll always camp at the corner of a pipe. So let's say you're looking at your map, you know exactly where you are, and then you plot out a course to go to the next location to ping. The problem is you'll be so consumed with that premeditated path you have in your head, you might not even check that he's waiting around a corner to roll catch you. Did I just really pathetically shoehorn in a Dark Souls reference into this video? Yes, I did. All right, so eventually I barely crawled across the finish line on this one. Whoa, no. You ain't stealing this win. You ain't stealing this win. But you know what? I don't care. I got the job done. If anything, right now, I feel like iDubbbz when he was in the sewer reviewing pickles. Finally, another pipe down. Surely, it can't get harder. Now, you're probably noticing a trend that every pipe we descend down, another enemy is introduced. I'm sure there is no correlation between that and how Five Nights at Freddy's did the exact same thing each night. And just like you probably guessed, the boss has a call.
Nico, it's Roman. Let's go bowling.
Letting us know that there's something else that only eats minimum wage plumbers down here.
Hey, you hear me? Okay, there's gonna be a third one around here. It's red, long head, like a dog or a bird. Just break eye contact if you see him. All right, look at your probe, map, flyer if you find one. I don't know.
There's a dog bird creature lurking. And if he sees you, you've got to make sure to cover your face or he'll rip your head clean from your shoulders. Now, you do have to keep an item held up to the dog to stop it from killing you. But the problem is I didn't realize how long you had to keep the item held up, which resulted in a very quick death. I opened the thing! The problem is with this pipe, it isn't just the dog bird you're dealing with, but every single other enemy that was previously introduced. Dude, that's an XL bully. Someone flushed that down the drain. Try to not make it about yourself challenge. Oh my, can I get a break? Can I get a break? You know when I talked about the Dark Souls term of roll catching? Now I would like to talk about ganking. Ganking is a term used in PvP games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring when you're too much of a coward to 1v1 someone, so instead you get your mates to help you. This is looked down upon in the entire community. You'll always be labeled a coward and probably indicted. So just to recap, you've got Rodland, you need to turn your light off, but then at the same time, you've got a dog and you need to cover your face with either your pinger device or your map. And on top of that as well, you've got a mouth breather that you need to keep jump scaring. So this can all get overwhelming very, very quickly. I can imagine the comment section being filled with baby's first Dark Souls, but I gotta make a confession here, guys. I have never played a Five Nights at Freddy's game. The only actual Five Nights at Freddy's game that I played in my life was Security Breach, and that's solely because Vanessa had a fat arm. Now, after being relentlessly jump scared by every single monster in random order, they jump in me. I actually managed to pick up a blank photograph. Oh, what's that? That's helpful. And then after that as well, took a very careless Rodland death. I had a severe continuous lapse in judgment. I thought for a second that it was the dog. The only problem is now you've got another gameplay element. Not an actual enemy that chases you, but all this mess and dirt that you've been cleaning throughout the pipes to get to new locations. Some moron has been flushing all of his razors down the toilet. And now you can't do your job without Rodland getting a smell of your blood from the other end of the map. So the first thing you'll probably notice when you load up Pipe 5 is that your boss doesn't actually have anything to say immediately. But as you get to work down here, you'll notice valves. But these aren't normal valves. When you see valves in most games, you'll probably hold a key to, remove steam so you can get to the next area, like every single game copied after Half-Life. But no, these valves are funny shapes. The same funny shapes that are on the photograph. Your mission here, like all the other pipes, is to ping certain areas and then leave. But if you instead choose to align all the valves with the direction on the photographs, this will open a hatch that usually doesn't exist. And after climbing down the pipe the reverse way, I'm not sure why, there's a ladder right there, you'll pick up a deranged drawing from one of your past co-workers. I personally don't even believe that the Elder Scrolls moth priests could decipher such insane ramblings.
My vision darkens, and I see no more.
This will then get you a call to head up back the hatch from your boss, and then net you access to one of the secret levels in the game. Regardless, though, you've still got to beat the actual map, and because of several undiagnosed mental illnesses, I refuse to do any form of side content until I beat the main game. And this is easily the hardest of the non-secret content. If you're not paying attention, death is incredibly easy. God, the noise that dog makes, I'll never get over that. Especially when your chat is as irritating as mine, even reaching the point where they would make fake call-outs to try and throw the run.
D7.
Nah, don't do that. That's not funny. One thing can be said here. Pyro fans have 2 jokes, maybe 3 on a good day. The same jokes that they will run into the ground faster than the crash of the Hindenburg, and then also claim that you're clip farming if you react to a single bit. Truly one of the fan bases of all time. But regardless, I reached the end and beat the pipe. Easy! So that's everything, right? Solid week's work. Dust yourself off and enjoy the same minimum wage of Bangladesh, which is a hefty $14.62 a month before tax. But, you know, just like any real blue-collar worker, the job is never truly done. You've got mandatory overtime to do before you can really say that you're done here. The first one is kind of similar to Pipe 1. That's the good news. And also on top of that, there's no threats here.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
The bad news is the entire map is drawn on a piece of paper towel.
You guys are not going to believe this. KSI has cancer. Do you want to win all the gifts?
The map also has more valves because, you know, we definitely needed more of them. Not getting sick of that at the minute.
Oh.
The valves here, though, only have one handle, no pattern. So what you're meant to do is find where you are on the map with the help of the paper towel, then use the numbers on the X and Y axis to complete a sum, and the answer would be the number on the wheel, so you'd set the valve handle to the direction of the answer on the right side of the paper towel. Did that make any sense? No? Good, because I had no idea either, and it took me about an hour of pleading with chat to help me with the answer. Afterwards, I got a fragment of the map, and I was able to leave. So completing the secret map got us more secret content. My favorite kind of reward in any game is completing a secret level to get access to more secret levels. Now, this doesn't seem to be too hard, or certainly not as hard as I find reading to be. Again, there doesn't seem to be a threat here. There's only one problem. Notice how the walls are different. They're not made out of pipes. They're made out of paper. In yet another masterstroke by Severn Trent, the UK's biggest water supplier to save money, the entire map is made out of paper, so your heat will drop faster than the average UK pensioner in winter, after the government makes another money-saving choice to help the economy. The only benefit here is your crawl speed is now completely uncapped, which you'll need, because if you don't complete the map in about 20 seconds, you'll get jump scared by the blue PNG. The uncapped speed is told at the top of the map before selecting it. Warning, heavy energy, movement may be faster than expected, which I assume is a loophole your employers use to inject you with 50 milligrams of pure fent, as no human would ever be able to crawl across fence this quickly without their heart exploding. Eventually, collecting all the plastic shards, you'll unlock the next classified pipe. This pipe seems pretty similar to the earlier levels. You've got all the enemies to juggle with, and it's a huge map again.
How can you read this?
But notice how it says, warning, high volatility areas detected. These are marked as strokes on the map. And a stroke is exactly what you'll have when you realize these pipes open and close to take you to completely different parts of the map. Did you plan out a whole route to get to your next ping? That's too bad, because you just climbed into an open mouth, and now you've gone from Pipe America to Pipe Japan. Where the only difference is you can hear people rewatching Evangelion up above on Netflix. And yes, they are listening to the English dub. If you're not planning every little movement, you'll probably get eaten faster than the 7-Eleven front counter Feastables. But this far in, I really feel like I got it. The last ping actually felt super quick. This is where your skills are really put to the test. Every enemy is active at once. The pipes that randomly spit you into other quantum realities are also here. And worst of all, the pipe is the most convoluted and confusing by far. Just look at Pipe 1 compared to classified Pipe 4. Pipe 1 is like reading a guide to build an IKEA desk, and classified Pipe 4 is like trying to navigate Twitter without seeing a stake gambling ad. Every time I'd get close, it felt like the game bizarrely added another layer just to force me to restart the run. I'm just going to restart. I'm literally just wandering around, pinging random stuff. Much like watching a streamer crash out, as sad and horrible as it is to see, you just have to keep coming back for more.
Shut the fuck up!
Much like Fear and Hunger, and yes, that video is coming out. Every time I played this level, I didn't necessarily feel like I was going to win, but just having to do it over and over was burning the layout of the game into my head. I knew that if I stuck with it long enough, I'd get a good run. It wasn't my equipment that was improving, but me, the player. Learning the layouts of these pipes and understanding that, you know, if I got ganked by all 3 enemies unfairly at the same time, that was totally okay. Nah, that double team is crazy! Just like how in Fear and Hunger, failing a random coin flip 4 hours into the game and losing all your progress is just part of the process. The problem is, though, in Fear and Hunger, I could just spawn in more NPCs to help me by bizarrely humping a wall. But here, there were no walls to hump, only pipes. And the only way I could do it was by persevering. By now, my palms were sweating for real. Too many runs were lost on that last ping. Much like the opening puzzle to Bioshock Infinite, I didn't get it. It had me perplexed and questioning if there were higher beings out there. What does 1 scroll mean? And 2 keys and a sword? I didn't find any keys in Bioshock Infinite, so I did the rational thing of uninstalling the game and filing a complaint to Steam support, complaining that this is the reason that we'll never see another Bioshock game. Eventually, after about 5 hours stream, I managed to ping all locations. The only problem is, I still had to get out. So I had to navigate all the way back across the map, avoiding the pipe's resident crackheads, and also trying to remember exactly where the hatch was because the game never tells you. And what was your reward for beating the game? A music video that styled like a YouTube poop, which I can say, honestly, goes kind of hard. If anyone can reach out to Bladey, I'm sure he'd love this guy to produce his music. You can also unlock a custom pipe. Sadly, putting 1987 doesn't give you a jump scare.
Was that the bite? No! Oh my god! No! No!
But one thing is guaranteed. If you put every multiplier on and set every enemy to its max number, you'll get one-tapped 10 seconds into your run. Is Rodland of Pipes Five Nights at Freddy's, but in pipes? Yes, it is. I can't dodge around that fact. It is still a task-based horror. Five Nights at Freddy's had, you know, put on the mask, wind up the music box, and you have very similar tasks here to not get one-tapped. Much like FNAF, every enemy can only be dealt with in a very specific way. But the limited first-person perspective reminds us that even with the rudimentary graphics, making someone feel anxious really is a skill, one that's not really achieved by accident. If anything, though, I love the fact how claustrophobic this game is. It makes it terrifying. I think there's one scene in like Five Nights at Freddy's 2 where you're checking a security camera and it's in a vent. That is basically this entire game. And if anything, it actually draws from much older games like Alone in the Dark. Okay, this is going to sound like a cope, but Alone in the Dark was the first 3D horror game of its kind, in a time where 3D games didn't even really exist. When you look at the gameplay, you're probably tempted to draw comparisons to Resident Evil for the PS1. And we'll get there, but for now, keep in mind that Resident Evil wouldn't come out for another 4 years when Alone in the Dark hit the market. Alone in the Dark feels stiff and aged because of its rigid tank controls, but so much of what gives horror games their identity is present here, especially what we were talking about earlier with only being able to see a specific part of the area you're in. The fact that Alone in the Dark feels the way it does is probably a matter of happenstance rather than, you know, strict intent. Unlike Resident Evil or Silent Hill, there was really nothing before it to go off, so in terms of how a character should move around in a 3D space in 1992, it's also a game that's extremely unforgiving. Which is exactly how Rodland of Pipes feels, because you can only go forwards or backwards. You can turn left or right, but if you're backed up into a corner, you can only really go forward, and there might be something waiting around the corner.
Dude, how'd you get there?
In Alone in the Dark, you fought off ghosts, zombies, and other creatures of the night, while also solving puzzles to escape a mansion. In Resident Evil, you face zombies, sharks, dogs, birds, wasps, and other infected monsters, while solving puzzles to escape a mansion. So Resident Evil isn't exactly like Alone in the Dark, you know, given the giant snake and massive shark.
Are you guys going trick-or-treating?
But the point I'm trying to make is Resident Evil and maybe even Silent Hill wouldn't have been so influential if Alone in the Dark hadn't established a lot of the core design ideas. In the same sense, Five Nights at Freddy's is not working entirely from scratch. I mean, sure, the characters are all original, but Five Nights at Freddy's also uses the idea of not being able to see an entire area, like in older survival horror games that I mentioned before, but in a very different way. In FNAF, agency is taken away entirely. You don't even get the option to run if you're stuck in place. I know people like to say that FNAF is basically just a PNG jump scare game, but when it dropped, people found it terrifying. That or YouTubers were probably overreacting, realizing they'd get banger videos. But what I like about Rodland and Pipes is it takes Five Nights at Freddy's core principle of not letting the players fight back against enemies, but also giving you incredibly limited movement. I mean, I wouldn't even call these tank controls, because tank controls, you could at least go left and right. These are pipe controls. You can only go left and right if there's an actual junction to do so. It even expands on this by messing with your sense of direction, much like how early Resident Evil or Silent Hill games worked. You're left to figure out things like, where is the room with the statue? And why is the voice acting so bad?
This town is full of pizza. How can you sit there and eat monsters?
Rodland of Pipes, on the other hand, is gracious enough to give you a full map right from the start, but it's designed in such a way that it leaves you with very few entirely distinct areas. There are no landmarks here, it's just pipes and pings and coordinates. The result is a sense of massive disorientation, not caused by a lack of knowledge, but by how similar the game's spaces feel. And there's no respite in knowing your surroundings because they all blur together, apart from each map having a different color. That's pretty much it. The only real landmark that I can think of are the valves on the walls that were used for optional side content. And this creates a constant nagging feeling that you haven't quite grasped the layout of the world. I know I'm massively overanalyzing a game where you're climbing around in pipes, but I just think the way that they went with the direction here is really cool because horror games are incredibly saturated. I mean, a good example is how many videos on this channel have I opened up with by saying, oh, I don't like horror games, they're full of jump scares. This game still has jump scares, but it works really well because you're already in this horrible claustrophobic atmosphere. The subtle sense of spatial confusion really makes Rodland Pipes stand out, especially in the context of older survival horror games. I get it, the game's bare bones, there's only 3 enemies, there's not really any kind of item management, there's barely any side content, but you can see that Rodland Pipes has taken lessons from older horror games and incorporated some of the strategies while also adding its own flair. You know, the idea of controlling your own movement and limiting your perspective, paired with the disorientating level design, it creates this really eerie atmosphere that keeps you constantly on edge. I would say that it has great environmental storytelling, but honestly, apart from the fatbergs and all the twigs and finding my 5th razor blade, there isn't really much to go off. There is, however, leaflets that you can pick up throughout the game that give you lore. I haven't really gone over it because I feel like the game dev was just kind of tweaking out because most of this is just completely unreadable and has an occasional scary face on it. In Five Nights at Freddy's, you were scared of the jump scares or you knew a jump scare was about to happen. In Rodland Pipes, you're scared because you're stuck in a claustrophobic pipe with no way out until you complete every single objective. So what does Rodland Pipes mean to me? AAA gaming is dead. Yep, there you go.